I entitled this Students, Our True Inspiration, and I hope that we all leave here today on cloud nine, ready to go back, see those students that we love to see, and see some of these old ones come back to visit us and tell us why that we are their true inspiration. So before we start with that, we're gonna, one of our speakers actually is a representative from Poetry Out Loud, and they're going to just share a little bit more or remind you what materials they have available for Poetry Out Loud, and then have our first speaker.
Once again, my name is Rebecca Engelman, and I have a great pleasure of being the Arts and Education Director for North Dakota Council on the Arts. And one of my most favorite programs is the Poetry Out Loud program. And we're very fortunate today that Janessa was invited to come and perform for you. And unfortunately, her teacher, Sarah Berger, could not be here today from Northwood because she's, in fact, presenting a workshop out in Northwood. So I'm speaking from Sarah. Sarah has been a long-time participant in our Poetry Out Loud program, and we were thrilled this year when her student was selected to go on to the Nationals. And since Janessa is here, she's going to speak a little bit about the impact her teacher, Sarah Berger, had on her in putting her into this wonderful position to participate at the national level. And then she's also going to do a few of her recitations that she did in the Nationals at Washington, D.C. So with further ado, Sarah.
Hello, my name is Janessa Hensrud, and last March I won North Dakota Poetry Out Loud, the state competition. And so I was invited here today to tell you about my inspiration and my story about Poetry Out Loud. So this year I'm going to be a senior in Northwood, North Dakota, and it's just been such a great experience and program, and I hope that everyone can look at it as something that they want to do also. Okay. Yesterday, I went to the Barnes & Noble Book Fair, which was great, by the way. I love books and all that, as I'm sure many of you do. And so I was in there for about 10 minutes. I only had one book that I could pick out, because that's all the money I had. But I had three. I had three books in my hands, of course. And so by elimination, I got rid of two, and then so I was holding this one book, and I was like, wow, so excited. I love this book. It has a great cover. It sounds great. And so I bought it, and I couldn't stop looking at it. And so I get in the car, and we're in the parking lot, driving out of the parking lot onto the busy street, and I look down, and in fine print above the title, it says, sequel to blah, blah, blah. Well, I didn't read the first book. So then I'm like, oh, okay. And then I was thinking, buying this sequel was kind of like my experience for Poetry Out Loud. And I went into Poetry Out Loud thinking one thing, and now I'm here afterwards, and I'm like, wow, that was something completely different. So it's just like the sequel. I thought I was buying this great one, the first book, and it wasn't. But this time it was in a good way. It was a good change. And that's in thanks to all my people that helped me and that inspired me through the way and helped me and pushed me through and were there the whole time. So first, of course, my mom, she was there the whole time. My three toddler siblings, they were breaking things in hotels and making noise during my poems, and so they were there. And then my English teacher from Northwood, Mrs. Berger, who I'm going to have to call her Sarah, which is weird, but Sarah Berger. She's wonderful, and she took time out of class every day to help me practice my poem and to have the rest of my junior class tell me what I needed to do, and then she would tell me what I needed to do and critique me and help me to get to nationals and even to the state. And so I'm just so grateful for my English teacher, and she is a teacher, and most kids are like, oh, I hate teachers, but I'm like, wow, she's cool, I'd hang out with her. But, so Mrs. Berger, no, I'm going to call her Sarah, sorry. Sarah Berger, she took time out of class, and she would help me out, and during her prep hours during school, when that's the one time teachers get breaks, she would work with me, and I'd come into her room. And so I look up to her, and I think that's great. And like I said, most kids are like, teachers, but I'm like, I want to be her one day. I would love to be an English teacher and to help kids like this and to get them into Poetry Out Loud. Sarah Berger, she also, after the first few years of Poetry Out Loud, made it an assignment in English class, that you had to pick out a poem and you had to do it for your class, in front of your class. And then if you were good enough, you would move on to the gym and do it in front of the school. And I think that's a great idea because kids who have no interest in poetry, like me, I didn't care for poetry. I mean, I would read it, but it wasn't important to me. Kids like that would have to be forced to get up in front of the class and to say their poem. And I think it's just such a great idea for her to do that, because I wouldn't be standing here today if she wouldn't have made me get up in front of the class shivering and wanting to just run away. I wouldn't be here. And so, like I said, this program has brought me a lot of places and brought me to D.C. I mean, Washington, D.C. That's great. I haven't really traveled anywhere other than Minnesota. And so Mrs. Berger was great, and she helped me out, and I get one more year with her this year as a senior. And so that's fantastic. She really inspired me, and she was really important. And Poetry Out Loud, like I said, you have to get in front of the class and then go to the gym, and then you go to state, and then if you're good there, then you go to nationals. And so also, I'd like to thank my boyfriend. He's here today. And even if walking down when I'm done, I fell on my face, he would still say, "Hey, honey, I'm proud." And so he traveled with me to all these places where I need to be, like Bismarck today. So, okay, again, I have two more people, Rebecca Engelman and Elizabeth Gross. They helped me out a lot. They always had humor, and they always were giving me hugs. And they introduced me to Heidi Serswick. She's a professor at UND in Grand Forks. And I worked with her 3 times, once a week for 3 weeks before I went to Washington, D.C. And having someone as important as a professor at a college, as someone as great as Heidi tell you that you have a chance at nationals, that really boosts your spirits. And you're like, wow, do I really have a chance? And even if I really stunk and I was really bad at my poems, I know that Heidi still would have told me, hey, you know what, you have a chance. And I think that that's a great teacher. I think it's lying, but if you tell somebody that they're good and that you help them out and make them think better of themselves, I mean, that's what teachers are for, to better their students and to teach them and to help them learn and learn more about themselves too. That's what Heidi did. And also Rebecca and Elizabeth, they were great. They told me, they traveled with me to DC too, and they told me that I needed to get up there, bow my head before my poem and think, bam. And then do my poem and everyone else would think, bam. And so that's kind of been our little joke that we've had. And I love that teachers can have humor and they can help you out and make you feel confident. And that's what the word bam does. It makes you woohoo, you know, and so thank you guys, you were great, and bam. And so I just want to finish up by saying Poetry Out Loud was great, and it shaped me who I am today, and I wouldn't be standing here if it wasn't for it, you know. And I was a shy girl from North Dakota, just going to high school, being a junior, and I'm still the immature, silly person that I was before, but now I'm only shivering a little bit, and I can still stand up here. But okay. I was asked to present one of my poems, so I'm going to do that. It's called These Poems, She Said, by Robert Brinkhurst.
Bam!
Bam! Okay. These poems, she said, are poems with no love in them. These are the poems of a man who would leave his wife and child because they made noise in his study. These are the poems of a man who would murder his mother to claim the inheritance. These are the poems of a man like Plato, she said, meaning something I did not comprehend, but which nevertheless offended me. These are the poems of a man who would rather sleep with himself than with women, she said. These are the poems of a man with eyes like a draw knife, with hands like a pickpocket's hands, woven of water and logic and hunger, with no strand of love in them. These poems are as heartless as birdsong, as unmeant as elm leaves, which, if they love, Love only the wide blue sky and the air and the idea of elm leaves. Self-love is an ending, she said, and not a beginning. Love means love of the thing sung, not of the song or the singing. These poems, she said, you are, he said, beautiful. That is not love, she said rightly.
Thank you very much, Vanessa. The next speaker we have is Charlie Scott.
Hi, I think I'll just give you my little da-da-da about who I am. I'm Charlie Scott. I'm from Richardson. I'm going to be a junior this year. I'm 16. And, yeah, I don't know why I said that. I don't have anything else to say. All right, I'll get started. I should start out by saying I have been inspired by almost every teacher I've ever had. I know I'm sucking up already. They've inspired me to try harder, to come to school more, and some have even inspired me not to do my homework simply out of spite. But I'll try to stick to the positive inspirations for this. In my opinion, a teacher isn't somebody who stands in front of the classroom and babbles on and on about verbs or covalent bonds. They're the people who help children and teenagers figure out who we are. And sometimes you have a truly amazing teacher who can do even more than that. So today I'd like to tell you about two of those teachers I've had in my life. But before I can tell you about that, I think I should give you a little bit of my personal history. The upcoming month of August will mark the 2-year anniversary of my sister's death. Her name was Aoife. And a couple months before that, my parents had gotten a divorce. So needless to say, it was kind of a hard time. But I think it brought me an even greater appreciation of the two individuals I'm going to talk about today. The first teacher I'd really like to talk about is a woman who taught me 8th grade math, and that's Mrs. Messer from Richardson. And I can honestly tell you, when I had her as a teacher, I really wasn't a fan. Which could have been because I really don't like math, but I dreaded her class every day. Although now she's my homeroom teacher, and I have to say, I have never regretted disliking someone as much as I knew her now. She is an awesome teacher, and I wish I could have figured that out sooner. But the reason I'd really like to talk about her is because within the somewhat recent past, she has lost her mother and her sister to cancer. I was very close with my own sister, and she was the one I talked to when I felt upset about anything, really. So after she died, I lost the person I told all my secrets to, the person I confided in. And in the aftermath of that, I found myself depending a lot on some of my teachers and my parents, my mom in particular. And Mrs. Messer lost both of those people. And you know, probably the two most important people in a woman's life are her mom and her sister. But the truly amazing thing is that she kept going. I mean, you'll never really know what happens behind closed doors, and strength after tragedy is really just keeping your composure in the public eye. But she was able to do that and come to work every day, which there's something to be said about people who can do that, because I spent the majority of freshman year yanking myself out of bed, forcing myself to get ready, and then sitting in my car with the radio on for 10 minutes before I pulled my keys out of the ignition, called in sick, and said to myself, well, at least I put makeup on today. So she did it, because it's hard to do it. And people don't like to talk about or even really recognize the fact that you've lost someone you love. So when you get up and you go to school or work, you do it knowing you're going to spend the whole day pretending nothing's wrong. Because you can't break down at work. You can't spend the whole day of school crying in the bathroom. It's not an option. You know, at least it never was for me. For me, breaking down and crying is something you don't do in public because, well, you're wasting a perfectly good cry on people who don't really understand. So for Mrs. Messer to be able to go to work and communicate and keep living was inspiring. And inspired me to do the same, to stop pulling the keys out of the ignition and just go to school. Because I think that's something Eva would have really wanted me to do. And it's really important to me to try to do what I think my sister would have wanted me to. Because growing up, she was always somebody that I looked up to. We were 10 months apart, and I was her shadow in almost every sense of the word. I followed her literally everywhere. If she was going to go for a horse ride, so was I. If she could go down the big slide at Raging Rivers, I could too. If she was going to go to a bonfire and hang out with her friends, I was coming with. And I must have annoyed the crap out of her. But she was my hero, my best friend, my big sister. So after she died, I felt like I'd been misplaced. Like there was nowhere I quite fit anymore. I mean, what's a shadow when the person casting it isn't there anymore? And that's where the second person I want to talk about comes in. She has to be one of the most amazing teachers and women I have ever met. And that woman is Mrs. Sue Anderson. I'm sure all of you know her. Who isn't here, but I really wish she was, because this is honestly a very long overdue thank you. Mrs. A is my speech coach, my drama coach, my student congress coach, and soon to be my English teacher. And trust me, we call her Mama Sue for a reason. She's probably one of the biggest inspirations I've had in my life thus far. Because she gave me the opportunity to prove to myself that I didn't have to be someone's shadow, that I could be exceptional just as me. And getting into speech and drama and Congress had to be the best thing I could do for myself, because there are things my sister would have never done. And it helped me step out from being a shadow. Mrs. A helped me step out from being a shadow. And she did more than just encourage me or tell me I was doing good. She did something for me I'm not even sure she knows she did. But she made plans. She said things like, when you're a senior, we should really consider, or don't beat yourself up because next year we can. And it meant the world to me that she was taking time to think about my future. She didn't dwell on that sad little Charlie Scott who had lost her sister. She inspired me to qualify for state speech 2 years in a row now, to be the only freshman that got a speaking role when I won and got first at state. She helped me figure out who I was post-tragedy, which for any of you who've ever experienced a loss of somebody that is such a huge part of your life, you know that isn't easy because it's like you are rewriting everything about yourself. Mrs. A saw the person I could be 2-3 years down the road at a time in my life when I could barely see the end of the day. And even now, she's had a really tough year losing her mother, among other things. And she's one of the few people in the world whose tragedies might delay her, but they never stop her. Instead, she uses them to help her move forward. Because in all honesty, we are a combination of our happiest memories, our worst tragedies, and our greatest fears. And to be able to accept that and just live like Mrs. A and Mrs. Messer do is, and yeah, I'm going to end this super corny, inspiring.
Thank you very much, and I guess we should have supplied Kleenexes for this section. Our next speaker is Jen Dunn.
Hi, my name is Jen. I'm a graduate of Bismarck High and the University of Mary. And as such, I was an exercise science major, by the way. So as such, I want you to all stand up just for a minute now. As I tell you about one of my inspiring teachers from the exercise science exercise science department, one of 2 faculty in that department. So Jill Newstad was the head of the department, and being that there were only 2 teachers, sometimes we would have her for 2 or 3 hours in a row. And so in between subjects, she would make us stand up and do 20 squats, or stand up and touch our toes, or take 2 laps around the classroom. And she would send us emails that would start out with, "Please excuse any typos in this email. I'm typing on my iPhone as I'm on the elliptical." And she was just really a teacher who really bought what she was selling. And therefore, we really bought it too. And so the reason I'm standing right now is because I learned from Jill, probably because she told us 50 times. But the new research shows that if you stand up, if you have to sit for a prolonged period of time, and if you stand up every 5 minutes, you significantly decrease your risk for heart disease. So, due to Jill's willingness and excitability for exercise, you're standing. Please sit down now. Be kind of intimidating. So when I was first told that I was going to be speaking today, I was really excited about it, and I was really honored. And then I realized that I'm speaking to a room full of English teachers. You guys teach public speaking. You're the masters of elegance. And why did I say yes? But first I want to tell you a little bit about last summer. I worked at a camp in Colorado, and we would have day hikes or 2-day hikes, so we would just be hiking for 5 hours at a time, and the only thing you had to do was to talk to the other people. So during staff training, we were going on one of our long treks up the mountain, and I was getting to know one of the other counselors who was working at the camp. And his name is Garrett. He's a little different than the rest of the counselors at camp. Most people who were working were either in the middle of college, maybe had just graduated, but Garrett was a couple of years out of college, and he actually had a real job, and for some reason was back at camp for the summer. Garrett had just finished from 2 years of Teach for America in Mississippi, and so on this long hike, he was telling me a little bit about his experience with that. And Garrett was a high school chemistry teacher, and he was telling me how ridiculously hard the last 2 years of his life were. He came out of college all bright-eyed and ready to teach America and inspire lives. And once he got to that particular school in Mississippi, he found out that it was not like the one that he came from. He found out that the students were not at all excited to be there. There was not a lot of parental support for the school either. Either a lot of parents were indifferent towards education and so weren't really pushing their kids, or they were kind of anti-education, didn't see the point of it themselves, and were passing those beliefs on to their students. So the kids weren't particularly excited to be at school, and that was compiled more by the teachers who had been dealing with this sort of environment for years and years and had kind of soured on the job themselves. And so they were telling the kids that, you might not have a good future in front of you, and they didn't really believe in their students. So then when Garrett got there, fresh out of college, ready to go, he didn't have a lot of support. He didn't have support from the faculty, he didn't have support from the teachers, he didn't have support from the students. And when Garrett got done telling me that story, I realized how wildly different his experience in Mississippi was from my experience in high school in North Dakota. Because I had amazing teachers, and I wanted to share a quote with you from William Glauser. And he said that when you study great teachers, you'll learn a lot more from their caring and hard work than from their style. And I had teachers who had caring and hard work. So I'll take you back to middle school. And I was in 8th grade, and I was about to go into high school, except we were still at the middle school, so I didn't really feel like it meant anything. But all the teachers were telling us that as you're signing up for your 9th grade classes, you should strongly consider taking a foreign language, because any respectable four-year university is going to expect you to have 2 years of foreign language behind you. So, feeling ready and I wanted to do good things for college, I chose Spanish, because that's what my friends were taking. So I got into class and I learned a couple of words in Spanish, and then the teacher was telling us how, since we were technically high school students, if we wanted to, and it would be really good to put on your college applications if you would join the high school Spanish club, go up to Bismarck High and do that. And since I wanted to make good impressions on my college applications, and because my friends were doing it, I went up to Bismarck High and joined the Spanish club. And at this point in my life, I really was not at all persuaded towards Spanish. The language had not enraptured me. I was not super excited about it until I got to the Spanish club. So the head Spanish teacher there the Spanish 4 teacher there is the head of the Spanish club. And when I met that lady, I found real excitement and enthusiasm for teaching. She loved what she was doing. She brought Spanish alive for us. So the classroom was not very exciting. I learned how to say things like pencil and notebook and window. And I went to Spanish club, and we would have a scavenger hunt through the school. All the clues were given in Spanish, so I honestly had no idea where I was going or what I was doing. But it brought it alive for me, and around Halloween we would make sugar skulls because that's what they did in Mexico. And around Easter we would blow the yolk out of the eggs and fill them with confetti and smash them on people's heads because that's what they do in Spain. And every year this teacher takes her students to the Cinco de Mayo festival in Minneapolis. So they have the Cinco de Mayo festival, which is the Mexican holiday, and they have people with food, and it's a huge celebration, and she wanted us to really get to know the culture. And then also around that same time, or that same weekend, they have the Festival of Nations in St. Paul, which the Festival of Nations is represented by tons of countries, from Europe to South America to Africa to Asia, and they have people dressed up in traditional garb and people who are selling traditional food and different trinkets and showing people what the way of life is in those particular countries. And at that point, I had been to Minneapolis before in my life, and I went to the Mall of America, and I really did not see a lot of diversity. So this was my first time leaving North Dakota and seeing, wow, there are people that are really different from me, and there are ideas that are really different from the ideas that I have. And this is really cool and really interesting, and I want to see more of this stuff. So, 4 years later, I was still in Spanish class and still absorbing everything that vibrant teacher was telling me about. And I was hearing more stories from different teachers and from that teacher about when they were in college and they went backpacking through Europe and they had these different experiences and met crazy people and decided that they liked things that were different. Or teachers who did a study abroad and they learned so many great things and they really got into the classes that they were in because they were learning right in the place where it was created. And I thought that was so cool, and it shook my world because up until that point I grew up thinking I was just a mini-me of my mother. And I was going to go to school in North Dakota, and I was going to go to college in North Dakota, and as soon as I graduated, when I was 21 or 22, I was going to get married and I was going to have 2 babies, and I was going to live in Bismarck. And that was my life. And then I heard all of these stories from my teachers that life is so much bigger than that and that I am actually capable of living that life too. So I got to college and I had the opportunity to study abroad in Rome. And I told my mom that, and she was vehemently opposed. And I asked her for her blessing to apply because she had already known about this and she was not into it. So she was telling me all of these horrible things that were going to happen. And I was going to go to Naples, and some man on a Vespa was going to take my purse and he was going to rip it right off my arm. And if I had it around my neck, he would pull it anyway and he would choke me. And so I asked her for her blessing to go on this trip. And she didn't answer. And she didn't look at me for the rest of the week. And so I was at this point where there was this really cool experience that I wanted to have, and I wanted to do these things that my teachers had been telling me about and see for myself that it's actually real. And so, at this point, I really want to go, but it's a really scary proposition. What if those guys in Naples did exist and they were going to choke me out with my purse? So, I needed somebody whose opinion I valued and respected and who I really trusted to have confidence in me and to support me. So at this point, I emailed a couple of my teachers from high school, one of them sitting right here, Tennessee. And I heard from them that, you know what, Jen, you're completely capable of doing this. It would be fantastic. It would be a life-changing experience. It would serve you so well to go on this experience. So with that newfound confidence and that caring and all that hard work that they had put in, I applied and I went. And because of that experience and a few more experience I've had, because I've been built up since I was a kid, I've been built up by my teachers and told that I'm great and I can do great things. In 3 weeks, I'm going to get on a plane and I'm going to go to South America. And I'm going to be there for the next year. And I'm going to do mission work for a year of my life. And there's no doubt in my mind that if I had teachers like Garrett's, the one that Garrett worked with, and not the teachers that I had, I would never have the confidence in myself to take a bold move like this and expand my own world. So, teachers, students are actually listening to what you're saying. Perhaps not so much the English part of it, that's a little cumbersome. But we are listening to your stories, and we're listening to what you value, and we're watching you, and we are learning from you. And what you're doing is making a huge difference. Thank you for what you do.
Thank you, Jen. Now we'll have Kayla Hill. Hello, everyone. Like she said, my name is Kayla Hill. I'm a graduate from Bismarck High School. And yeah, woo-woo, at least 2 people over there can support me in that. But it was a great school, really. But I wanted to start off by sharing a story that takes all the way back to my elementary school years. So, I used to be a little spaz, and I used to be silly and hyper. Not much has changed, but school has never been easy for me. And to be very honest and to be very vulnerable, it's still not. I'm in college, and my mom's in the back, and she's seen every tear I've cried over, classes I can't pass, and she's heard every horror story of that teacher who told me this and embarrassed me. But she's also gotten to hear the great things about the teacher who has inspired me to be a teacher. And I'm super excited for that. But my story starts way, 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 way back, which isn't so far back for all of you. sorry. Anyway, I'm going to move on. I was in first grade when school actually became school. Kindergarten was more coloring and shapes, and we learned numbers, and I felt just like everyone else in kindergarten. But first grade, that was the grade that things started changing, and that's when reading became important, and math problems had to be right. And I remember, even young, I tried to listen, and I tried to do what everyone else could do, but I just couldn't. There was something different with me. There still is, but it's special, and it's awesome. However, I didn't know it then. And so I considered myself quite a failure to see everyone else get smiley faces on their picture, or their homework, and I got, red frowny faces. So those red pens, just don't use them. They're not worth it. But anyway, my teacher noticed right away that I wasn't doing well, that I was different, and she talked to an aide. And I went to Rita Murphy Elementary, and this aide's name was Miss Strand. So Miss Strand welcomed me in right away, and she's like, yeah, let's do this. And she was super hyped on learning. And I already had this mindset that I'm stupid and that I cannot learn, and so I was not as excited as she was to go to class. But I even remember I'd come home telling my parents, I'm stupid, I'm stupid, I'm stupid, I'm stupid. And they'd get so mad. My dad, he doesn't have I don't know, obviously he cares about me so much. He'd get so mad at me when I'd say that. He'd yell at me, which made me feel even worse. So it was like this really bad cycle, but I would even sometimes catch myself having that attitude at school, in elementary school, and Miss Strand she'd always call me out. She wouldn't yell, but she'd always call me out, and she'd say, no, you're not. You're smart, you're intelligent, you're special, you're beautiful. And before I knew it, I was like, maybe she's the stupid one. Like, why does she care so much? I really didn't get it, but she did, and she got it all along, and she walked through with me every step, and I learned to read. Math has still been a challenge, but at least she gave me confidence. That's one thing. So even though I wasn't the best at math, she taught me that I have other awesome characteristics and qualities that are awesome. And so I remember even walking out of her class, I would be reading a book, and she'd say, hey, put that down. You're walking in the hallway. You're running into people. No, I'm almost to the 3rd chapter. And so I would walk home reading, which is not safe, and I wouldn't encourage it. But there's just so much growth that took place, all because one teacher cared. And that's more to me than anything else. And so going off of that, middle school wasn't a breeze. Who cares? It's over. But then I went to high school, and I still had similar challenges in high school with academics, because academically I've always been slower, and academically I just function differently. And so, although English, I actually prospered, thank you, Miss Strand, I still struggled with this whole math aspect. And I had teachers who blatantly humiliated me in front of my peers, and then I had teachers who just caught notice of me, and they paid attention to me. And I had one particular teacher who I was in class one day, junior year, and I was so frustrated with my homework. I just wasn't getting it, and everyone around me was. And you know, that's one thing in elementary school, but when you're a young adult, and it's still that way, it's so much more embarrassing. And so I was trying to do my math like everyone else, and I couldn't, and I tried so hard, and I was still failing. So I remember pushing my assignment away, and I started crying in class. I was not obnoxious about it. They were quiet tears, but they were tears. And I was so mad at myself. I just didn't get why I couldn't learn or why I couldn't pass. And my teacher, she saw me. That's all I can think of is she saw me. And she walked over to me, and she sat down, and her heart was literally broken for me. And she told me that. She said, that breaks my heart, don't cry. And so she walked through the rest of the problems with me, sitting with me. And she was such a sweetheart that, I wasn't embarrassed after that, because at least getting my homework done. And, things went really well after that. Not only was my homework assignment finished, I did end up passing the class, not a D+, but I made it. And anyway, it was just teachers like that who not only had a passion for what they were teaching, but had a passion for me. And that's been a very popular topic among the speakers who have already spoken. Wanting to be an aspiring teacher, I'm super stoked, super excited to start working with kids, but there's a difference between having a passion for teaching, which is what every teacher should have, but there's also a difference between having a passion for teaching and a passion for who you teach. And today I want to encourage you to have a passion for who you're teaching rather than just what you're teaching. Not that it's not important. English, math, science, anything you teach. Yeah, that's your job. Get at it. However, the kids sitting in your desks, like Charlie shared with her sister, you honestly never know what's going on in someone's life. And I work with kids. It's not an elementary job that I want, but even with my kids, some days I love them, other days I don't. Other days I don't want to be there, I don't care. But then there's just this integrity issue that's just like, you just have to care. It's easier to ignore. It's easier to see struggles or see someone hurting and just say, lunch break. But I would just encourage you to go past that and care for the person you're teaching. I've had many great teachers throughout my years, but the ones who most affected my life are the ones who cared about me, not just what they were trying to teach me. I want to encourage you with that, and thank you for listening. Thank you, Kayla. Our next speaker is Will Robinson.
Well, when Mrs. Volk contacted me, asked me if I would speak at this conference, it seemed like it would be a pretty cool experience. She wanted me to talk about teachers that have inspired me and what that's helped me achieve. I only really had one problem, and that was, what teacher was I going to talk about? Thought back to grade school, and nobody particularly really stood out for what I wanted to say. High school is too hard to pick someone specific, and I was having the same problem with college. And that's what made me really sit down and think about how I was defining a teacher. In my head, I was saying, oh, well, they were really good at helping me with math, or I had a lot of fun in their history class, but did those things really help me achieve what I've done today? For me, the teachers who have inspired me and helped me become the person I am today have taught me a lot more than things like history, math, grammar, and the other typical subjects. Now, I know that's all important, but is it really what has truly inspired me? Not totally. It's the way that those teachers taught me and how they helped me learn that really transformed my education. Although I know she probably doesn't want me to, let's take Mrs. Volk, for example. I realize this isn't the smartest thing for me to say right now, but English was definitely not my favorite subject in high school. I was more of a math and science kind of guy. However, Mrs. Volk's creative writing class my senior year was easily my favorite class in high school. We didn't sit in our desks all hour listening to lectures and watching PowerPoints and things like that. We were working on projects. We were collaborating together. We we were having discussions. Mrs. Volk would give us some guidance on a topic and let us take it in the direction that we wanted to go. I had a say in what I wanted to focus on, and I got to decide how I was going to do it. I wouldn't say that she was teaching us as much as I would say that she was helping us learn. I wanted to be in that class every day because I knew I was going to enjoy it, and I knew that I could still do the work while making it unique and creative in my own way. It's teachers like Mrs. Volk who have aided me in getting to where I am now. Do I remember all the different things about the proper way to set up a paragraph or the difference between APA and MLA format? Yeah, but I'll tell you what I do remember clear as day. How to be creative, how to turn something boring into something I love, or how to work with others. The satisfaction of doing something and doing it right. All these things that I learned in her class are really what has propelled me into the position I am in today. And learning all those things from Mrs. Volk is what has made me respect her and trust her as much as I do now. I still go and visit her at home and at school when I'm on break from college, and I tell her just about anything if she asks me. That's what a teacher is in my eyes. A teacher as well as a friend. Not someone who helps you pass a standardized test, but someone who is more interested in seeing you develop not only in academics, but as a person. That's why I am where I am today. I currently am a senior at Fort Lewis College in Durango, Colorado, where I am an adventure education major. It's still education, but it's definitely a little different than what people are used to. I focus on teaching people things like interpersonal communication, teamwork, trust, determination, confidence. We do this through all types of activities. Rock climbing, ending with a discussion on trust and overcoming personal fear. How the communication and teamwork needed to navigate a whitewater canoe down a river is pretty similar to the communication and trust needed to build a strong marriage. Or how using an obstacle course with a corporate group is a pretty good way of pointing out good group techniques to be more efficient in the workplace. That's a little insight into the type of teaching I am currently developing. Hopefully with my degree, I will have the opportunity to help people gain a number of qualities that they can use to succeed themselves. Now, I was hoping to give a little demonstration of different things I like to work on with others. One of my favorite things is to help with when people are first in a group together and they don't really know each other and they need to break the ice. It's usually so they can be more comfortable around each other and open up and be a little goofy, something that I'm pretty good at. Hopefully it'll be easier for them to work together and conquer other things like teamwork and communication. So if I can get 10 volunteers to come forward, we will do a little game. Anyway, 10. You guys make a line right here. We got 5, we're halfway there. 6, 7. We got 8. One more. Yeah, all right. Okay, so I want all of you guys to think of your favorite animal right now. Favorite animal. Got it? Got it? All right, now, without talking, you guys have to organize from the largest animal down here to the smallest animal down here in decreasing size. You can't talk. The only things you can do are make the sounds of your animal and the actions that your animal makes. So whenever you guys are ready, start figuring it out, and we'll see how you do at the end. You guys think you got it? What were you? Elephant. That's definitely big. Camel. I'd say that's good. Bear. Gorilla. Wolf. Black lab. Small dog. Rabbit. Turtle. Perfect. You guys did great. You guys sit down. That's all I need to do. I've believed in using plain old simple fun like this to help people learn for quite a while, and it's helped me to achieve a lot. Like I said, I'm going into my senior year of college, but I'm pretty sure that I already have my dream job. I'm the site director of Triangle Y Camp in Garrison, North Dakota, and it is the best job in the world. I admit that I plunged about 4 different toilets and had to talk to 2 kids who were fighting while I wrote this speech, but it was fun nevertheless. A lot of people think that I just get to play with kids all day, but I definitely see it in a different light. The campers may not know it, but I use every single day to hone my skills and work on becoming a teacher for every single one of them. What am I teaching? I'm helping a cabin of 10-year-old girls develop teamwork as they search for counselors during a game of counselor hunt. I'm showing a camper that if he can overcome his fear of riding a horse, he can overcome his fear of public speaking. Or maybe it's the camper who's ascending the climbing tower who learns to use that same determination he needed to reach the top and applying it to working hard in school. So I may not be quite considered a teacher yet, but I'm working on it. And I can sure bet that I'll use the qualities like the creativity that I learned in Mrs. Volk's writing class to help me make it there. Whatever it is, I know I'll have all those previous teachers who inspired me to thank.
I told him not to talk about me. That's the first thing I said. But thank you. Our last speaker is going to be Adil Saeed. Did I say it correctly?
As Aristotle once proclaimed, those who educate children well are more to be honored than those who produce them. For those only gave them life, those the art of living well. Now, as I walk you through my own life, it will become evident how the educators, you, have impacted my life more so than my own parents. Now, I'm not discrediting them in any way. I'm just saying the person I am today are because of the educators from you. Now, just a little background about myself. My name is Adil Saeed. I was born in the capital city of Sudan, in Khartoum. I came to America when I was 5 years old. There was a lot of war going on in Sudan, and my dad did a lot of political activism. So the government was after our family for a while. So we left Sudan when I was around 6 months. We went to Egypt, and then we went to Libya. We lived there until my sister was born. And then we went back to Egypt, and then finally to America. Now, because I was foreign and the only language I knew is my native tongue, Arabic, beginning of my life, educators came into play. I was put into Head Start for actually 2 years because I didn't know enough English to be thrown in regular grade school. From there, once I started grade school, I was put into ELL. So educators, even from the beginning of my life, were very crucial. And I don't have an accent talking to you today, so, that was a really good job. But even in that point of my life, teachers were nothing more than just teachers. I didn't have a special relationship with them. I went to school, and then I went home, and it was detached for the most part. I think the first glimpse of a relationship with a teacher came in the 6th grade with my math teacher, Mr. Longthorn. It wasn't too deep of a relationship, but I connect very well to humor, and he was a very comical guy, and at that point I realized that teachers were, kind of actually humans. So then you can connect with them. And like I said, it wasn't too deep, but it was very good insight for me, and I like to develop a relationship with teachers from there on. I've known a little bit of a brown noser with my friends, but nothing too big. Now, when I got to high school, I think relationships with teachers became a lot more crucial to me. Now, my father and I don't have exactly the best of relationships. He's a very, I would say, discriminatory, bigoted, closed-minded individual who's very set in his ways. He was born in a small village in Africa. I grew up Muslim, and he's very set in the culture and the ways of that. And we only came to America to escape the persecution, but as well as to get educated. So the American culture isn't really his favorite. Now, because I came here so young, I'm modernized. I'm more open-minded. I'm more liberal, accepting of different viewpoints and ideas, which is right there the clash of personalities. A more recent example of the issues that me and my father have had was actually a few months ago. It was over the prom. Now, it's nothing too big to you guys because prom is a very American thing that happens, and I'm sure most of you have all gone to your prom. But when I sat down and talked to my father about prom, it was an absolute no-no. That's an American thing. Girls and guys don't mingle in our culture. It's absolutely not. And we got into a little bit of an argument, but as parents, always win, I said okay. Now, I didn't go to my junior year prom because I couldn't find a way out, but senior year came rolling along, and there are no two senior proms. There's one. And I was going to go senior prom one way or another. And I literally thought the entire year how I can get out of the house, because I wasn't going to tell him I was going to prom. Yes? But by the time senior prom came along, I told him that I was going to a high school speech competition in Bismarck. So it was going to be a 2-day trip, and I was going to be back Sunday by 5 o'clock. And he gave me money to go on my trip, which, I went to prom, I spent it on my day, we had a fabulous time. And then Sunday came along, I spent the night at a friend's house. It was around 3 o'clock, and then my phone kept ringing. My dad was calling me. And I was about to answer in my friend's house, that was going to happen. So I'm like, you know what guys, I'm going to go home early. I went home, and I found out my parents were not home. So I called my father back, and I'm like, hey, what's up? I got back 15 minutes ago, and I'm home now. And he's like, you're lying. And I'm like, no, I'm not. And he said that we were just at the high school, and your car wasn't there. There it was. I did not leave I left, the car was at my friend's place, and I didn't think that way all the way through. But thinking on my feet, I was like, well, we didn't leave from the high school. We left from the West Fargo Public Library. And he said, I don't believe you. Your story sounds suspicious. And I called his bluff. I'm like, yeah, that's fine. I'm not lying to you. He's like, I'm going to go to school tomorrow, and I'm going to check. And I said, fine. He's threatened me with going to school numerous times and all the time. I'm like, okay, it's no problem. He never shows up. But Monday came along. I was, ironically enough, almost about to fall asleep in English class. And I get called down to the office. And as I walk into the office, that was a very huge moment for me. Because it was the moment where I wanted to stand up. It was every idea, every principle that I ever stood for in that moment, because my relationship with my dad, I always conceded to his beliefs. I always suppressed my ideas to what he wanted, just to get along, and because he was my money source. But that moment right there, I kind of threw it all away, and I didn't lie any further. I looked him in the eye, and I'm like, Dad, I went to prom. And it didn't go over well. We had a little bit of an argument, and to make a long story short, I ended up giving him the car keys that I was driving. I gave him my cell phone, and I turned around and I didn't look back. I haven't seen my father since then. But it was in that moment that everything every teacher or administrator has ever told you came into play. It was, listen, we're here for you. And you're told that, but it doesn't really come into play until you actually need it. And it was, as soon as I walked out of that office and left my dad behind me, I walked into the counselor's office, because, that was the first thing that and I went there, and Mrs. Odenheide was her name, and she helped me. I was very angry, and she helped me through my emotions, and she provided me with steps. and what I could do from there, because I didn't know what I was going to do, but I did know what I wasn't going to do. There was no way I was going to go back to my father's house, because that was the end of the line for me. It pushed me too far, and I was done at that point. But out of everything or every person that has ever helped me, I think there was one individual who has helped me the most. And this individual really doesn't need any more praise than he has, because, he has an ego almost as big as his gut. But for me, Mr. Kernodle was my mentor since junior year. I had him for English, I had him for debate, and he was also my student congress coach. So, and even the way he is, and like I told you earlier, I connected with humor, and he's a very humorous guy. I connected with him, and he really connected with me because I saw a lot of myself in him. He almost became a father figure to me. He helped me a lot with things and steps to do. He's provided me with opportunities that no one else could have done. Even the fact that he knew that something was up with me and just talked with me, even my own sister, who was also going through the same stuff I was, he connected with that. And I didn't even walk up to him and tell him anything. He knows his students and he reads them. Because if something is off, you know it. And when you approach that, and you approach a student about those issues, you really get to them. Because in that moment, everything is sort of pushing down and you don't think of anything else. But when you, as the educators, come into our lives, it really means a lot. And to me, it was Mr. Kernodle. So just a little personal thank you to Mr. Kernodle. So if I'm going to tell you anything from my little spiel here, it would be just to be wary that there is extra baggage with the students that when they come along. That it isn't just school and home, it's really interconnected. And you can influence so much by every effort that you do. And your skill level and how you want to be a teacher also influences that. There's a quote by William Arthur Ward. The mediocre teacher tells, the good teacher explains, the superior teacher demonstrates, and the great teacher inspires. I would like to say that every teacher should aspire to inspire. Because if you ask yourself why you want to be a great teacher, it's not just for the education and the reason that you teach. It's the knowledge, every type of knowledge that you bestow on the students. It's the companionship that you form with them. It's the meeting and interaction with all the young minds. It's the second home that you can provide for them. It's your almost uncanny ability to evolve with the times and change your ability and your teaching skills. Your ability to sit at a conference to see if you can better your own skills. And even more so, to be the artists of tomorrow, because we, the student body, are your masterpiece. Every shred of effort that you put in on the canvas of our lives impacts us. And we are grateful for every ounce of selfless fortitude that you put forth. Because everything you do is not for you, it's for us. And we are indebted to that. So I, in the name and the voice of the student body, would like to thank each and every one of you for everything that you do. Thank you.
Well, I've been to conferences since I started teaching. That's the best way that we've ever ended this conference. Thank you to each and every one of our speakers. We are so grateful just to hear the snippet of thank you, and your speeches meant the world to us, speaking for the group. I don't know that we have any other business other than silent auction things to pick up, evaluation forms to fill out. They should be at your table. Conference credit things to drop off. We have the last final drawings as well for the gift cards and the night of the 7 C's. So those are the last things we have to finish up. So until I grab the mic again, if you want to start gathering your things and hugging each other.